Perfect. Thank you so much.
Not recording.
Teresa, did you notice that Robbie hasn't been able to sign back on? He said his computer was restarting and I don't see that he's back with us if you are interested.
Yeah, I did see that on the Slack. It did come across my screen. Thank you, Wanda. All right, it is 6 o'clock. Thank you to everybody that has joined us today. Welcome to our Southwest Community Policing Council. For our August meeting, our topic, of course, is overrepresentation of persons of color in correctional facilities in New Mexico, not underrepresented. Where we're going to be going live on Facebook. We have some tech issues on the city Zoom, which is totally fine. We will be sharing this discussion tomorrow once we get the recording, or tonight if it's feasible for Kelly. My name is Teresa Garcia and I'm the chair of the Southwest CPC. I apologize in advance for not being in attendance for the past few meetings. My father passed away, and so I took some time for my health and overall, and so I'm doing better every single day as I'm getting back into the swing of things. And so it is now 6:01, and I would like to call this meeting to order. And with that being said, I would also like to do a quick roll call of our CPC members so our community can know who we are. So once I call you, if you could raise your hand and say here, that would be fantastic. Stephanie Griego.
Here.
Wanda Harrison.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Andrea Lester Young.
Hello.
Secretary Robbie Vigil.
Here.
Yeah, you made it. Good.
Yeah.
Joseph Kolaski.
Here.
David Reza.
David here.
Awesome. And Chris Cedillo.
Here.
Hello, sir. Nice to see you. So now moving forward to address some housekeeping items. I wanted to make everyone aware that this meeting is recorded and it will be uploaded on YouTube, where our CPC liaison will be doing that for us. And I will be putting this link in the chat. So you are more than welcome to head to that YouTube channel, and you can also see other people's prior meetings. This is a webinar where attendees cannot be seen on the screen or heard unless permission is given prior. And but you are more than welcome to please put any of your questions or submit any Q&A questions in that portion of the Zoom webinar where Bobby and David Reza will do their best to address your questions. So then moving forward to the agenda. I would like to move for the approval of the amended agenda for this evening, where we have Mr. Pete Silva giving us an update on recruiting. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Perfect. Thank you. Is there a second?
Amended.
Second.
Thank you very much. So next we have the approval of past minutes for our July meeting. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? I'm sorry, yes, to approve the past meeting minutes.
I move to approve.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So this now leads us to, actually, with the approval of the agenda, Mr. Pete Silva, can you please give us an update in regards to recruiting?
Sure. So you guys probably all saw the news conference that they've done some increases on hiring bonuses, especially those for laterals, $15,000 for laterals. So we're hoping that draws us in some more officers. We still have $5,000 that's for cadets. And then they also added the $1,500 sign-on bonus for police service aides, and that's the newest thing. To my knowledge, I don't think we've ever offered a bonus to PSAs, which to me is kind of important because to do that, we can also include those folks who you don't have to have your U.S. citizenship to apply as a police service aide. You just have to have a work permit. So that opens up our hiring options for that job class. So that's really big for me. We have 48 in the academy right now. We have 6 laterals that just graduated the other day, and We are still hiring for our November class, and we're looking for laterals for also another November lateral class. We have around 290 qualified applicants that are scheduled to test between now and November. But that number, it seems high. It seems like, okay, we got 290 people, but when you whittle that down to those that actually appear to test, that pass testing, I think we're on track to hit our goal for that November academy. So let's keep our fingers crossed. As the community, we want to know what you guys' opinions are, what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and if there's any suggestions that you guys have for recruiting. Right now, I'm actually in El Paso, so that's where we've been doing a lot of traveling to, and just trying to get recruits out of El Paso. There's quite a few colleges here. In fact, there's a community college that does a satellite academy, much like our own CNM, where we've been trying to get more recruits out. But other than that, I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. I don't see anything in the chat currently for any questions. So if anybody in the community does have a question in regards to recruiting, please place it in the chat or in the Q&A section. All right, well, before we move on, I just wanted to say hello to our commander, Timothy Espinoza. He did join us today. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. And thank you for putting in your time for this. I've gotten nothing but positive feedback from everybody, from the executive staff, from the department to the DOJ, to the monitoring team, to the U.S. Attorney's Office, on how well the Southwest CPC has been going for the last several months, and how we're kind of the tip of the spear for CPCs now. So I appreciate everybody that's putting in the work for this, and I really think that it's going really well. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. That means a lot coming from you, and so hopefully we can work together moving forward with some events that we have planned. Which now leads us to our discussion with Mr. Baron Jones. Welcome. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it over to David Reza, who will be facilitating the discussion, and Robbie, who will be supporting with any questions moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa, and thank you, Commander Espinosa. That feedback is exactly what the community needs. You know, is knowing whether or not we're on point or whether we're missing the mark with respect to collaborating with the city in the efforts to try to get some community engagement. Well, our speaker for tonight, as Teresa has alluded to, is Mr. Baron Jones. He's a senior policy strategist for the American Civil Liberties Union here in New Mexico. Mr. Baron Jones joined the ASLU of New Mexico in January 2018 after spending several years working as a journalist for the Rio Grande Sun in Española, where he covered stories related to government accountability and education. He also has extensive experience writing about issues of domestic violence, poverty, and addiction, especially as they relate to the pressing need for criminal justice reform. He earned a degree in journalism from the University of New Mexico and has worked for several news outlets in central and northern New Mexico. Baron entered school as a non-traditional student and credits his education for helping him address the issues that led him to be negatively impacted by the state's criminal justice system. He believes his work on justice reform will have powerful impact on his community. Baron grew up in Detroit, but has lived in New Mexico for over 20 years. He is a proud papa of 2 rescue dogs, Holmes and Me Too. I like that dog's name, Holmes.
Yeah, I thank you so much, David. I wanted him to be able to be like Sherlock Holmes and then go to the body or the hood, right? So what's up, Holmes, and Mr. Holmes, so he can code switch, right? And thank you for that introduction. It sounds pretty good when I hear it, so I should be a little bit proud of myself, right? I dig that. Thank you so much. So as David mentioned, I moved to Albuquerque, and I'll open this on a personal note because it directly relates to what we're here talking about this evening. But when I moved to Albuquerque in 1996, around 1996, from Detroit, I'm not sure if you folks are familiar, but Detroit is a large population of Black folks. I think at the time, 87, 88%, 90% Black city. So when I moved here it was sort of culture shock. So I reached out to my older sister who had been living here for a while. You know, I had lost contact with her because our parents had died, you know, when I was, you know, a child, right? And I lost contact with her for years. But I asked her, like, hey, where are all the black people at? You know what I mean? Like, where are the black people at? And she immediately tried to steer me to South Broadway. She goes, I think the black folks live near the Sticks because we're near the university, or try the Kirkland edition. So I went over there and I didn't see anyone, right? I mean, like no one my age. At the time I was 24 or something, right? So I wanted to find someone, you know, that I could connect with here in town. And there was no one, right? And like many people without means, right? Until I went to college, you know, I flipped and flopped between, you know, low paying jobs and things like that. I worked in the service industry. So when I got arrested for what I'm going to refer to as poverty stops, and I want to say at the beginning that I'm watching my language carefully, and I'll make sure I don't say anything that offend anyone. But I was arrested for what I call poverty stops. You know, busted expired registration or cracked windshield, right? So at one of those times it came up and I got a ticket that I couldn't pay, right? And a warrant, I missed a court date or something, and a warrant was put out for my arrest. And I was taken, you know, downtown to Fourth and Roma, right? Fourth and Roma, the old jail. And immediately I saw black faces when I went in the door, right? But back in the day, what they did was they shipped you, or excuse me, shipped you, I'm talking jail language, but they transported you based on your crime, right? So I was low level offense, right? Traffic. So they transported me out to the West Side Jail, which is now the emergency shelter. And you know, and when you go through the jail process, you know, it was a young black dude helping me, you know, who passed out my mattress and my you know laundry and gave me my jumpsuit. But I was at the very last pod of the jail, L pod, right? And I think it went K L. I don't know my alphabets, but L or K was the last pod, right? So I had to walk down that really long hallway. I don't know if either of you folks have been out there, right? But it's a real long hallway, and I was just tall enough barely to see, you know, over the window ledges so I can see who was in that pod. And it really sort of tripped me out to see how many black folks were in that pod, right? How many black folks were housed in those housing units. And so I not know why I didn't see anyone for the when I went to the Sticks, and I better not use the ghetto names for them, but when I went to the Kirkland edition or South Broadway, why I didn't see anyone. Right, and another thing I noticed during that walk is the lack of white individuals, white men, you know, young men who are housed in those jail cells, right? And during my stay, I learned that white individuals being booked into at the time it was the Bernalillo County Jail after BCC, I can't remember what it was. I'm called at the time BCDC, Bernalillo County Detention Center. But it was an anomaly to see white folks booked into the jail, right? And this year, you know, full disclosure, folks, prior to my time of working as a journalist in northern New Mexico, last month I spent I celebrated my 12th year free anniversary, right? And that's my 12th year out of, you know, after getting out of prison for the last time. You know, I was doing this thing I was doing what I call a life sentence on installment plan because I was living with substance abuse issues. I hadn't had the resources to take care of them, so I was just in and out. So this week, I celebrated, no, not this week, but June 27th, I celebrated my 12th year free anniversary. And I would also like to point out, when I moved here in 1996, there was no way in the world I would be in another room with a black man, whether I was outside of jail, right? So to see Kelly on the call working in Albuquerque, I feel pretty cool because now I go into the store, I'm not the only one there, and that's big. I mean, you talking about like it was really weird not seeing people that look like you when I first moved here. But through the approximately 10 years I spent, you know, cycling not cycling, the 20 years I spent cycling in and out of jail for a total of about 10 years, I noticed the same sort of disparities, right? I noticed the same amount of disparities when you go into a prison in Los Lunas. You see far more Black people, Black men, than you see on the street, and it creeps me out a little bit, right? But what I witnessed walking down those halls in the county jail and in prison is supported by the data, right? MDC and somebody saying MDC. UNM just published June 20 their analysis of the jail population, and right now it just shows that those disparities are ever present in our jail system and in our state system. And I'll throw out a couple numbers just so you all can get an idea of it. Bernalillo County, I'm speaking on the county right here, and I would have to prefix this is that data collection of data in the criminal legal system is dismal, right? So I applaud the Bernalillo County, I applaud the UNM, and I applaud the New Mexico Corrections Department for making their best effort to collect data so we can see who's locked up and why, right? In certain circumstances. But here in Bernalillo County, and I'm moving fast, so I'll slow down. Excuse me, I get all excited, so excuse me. But here in Bernalillo County, Black folks, the African American population represents about 2.69% of the population. However, when it comes to our jail population, we're up near 9 and 10%, right? And the same thing can be found on the state level. It is similar for our Native American community members, right? Native American folks represent about 5.5% of the county's population, but squarely sits in at about 7.5 of the jail's population, right? And Hispanic folks, Hispanic men particularly, represent, I think, something like 44% of the county population, but well over 53% of the jail population. So these racial disparities are persistent throughout the system. Even when we look at what takes place in our New Mexico Corrections Department, who and you all know the breakup of that in Mexico, you're usually sentenced to the New Mexico Corrections Department if you committed a crime that carried 1 year or more and you go to prison. But those numbers, those disparities exist in our corrections department. I think the ACLU, our national office, worked with the Urban Institute and the Vera Institute to publish a blueprint for mass incarceration, how to end mass incarceration. And what they found were very similar numbers. African Americans make up 2% of our state's overall population, but represents about 7 or 8% of the jail population. The same with the Hispanic men. For some reason, they didn't have solid data on the on what happens with our Native American community members. So this is some interesting stuff. Let me see where I'm at. Excuse me. And so why this happens, right? And I think folks are starting to come. I think folks are starting to really sort of identify why this happens. I think Chief Medina made a statement yesterday, and it sort of made me feel good. I didn't really like the content, but it made me feel good because we had a police chief recognizing to the media that we need to get the people the help they need, right? And he didn't mean to help like they're in danger, but he meant the help with the social issues that produce and facilitate crime. So that made me feel really good, right? But where I'm at, where I'm at, I'm going too fast. I need to slow down. And also I must note that our women's population is growing like big time, right? That's the fastest growing population in the state, while the men's population have been decreasing steadily since 2008. The women's population have been decreasing. I think if you look back, if you go back 30, 40 years, you'll see something like a 500% increase over that time, right? And one of the reasons this is happening is that we are it's the manifestation of the war on drugs, right? Here in New Mexico, right? If you're living with substance abuse, right, and you have a little bit of stuff that you use to treat yourself, to self-medicate, you can end up in jail, right? And eventually you end up in prison for that. So that's why these numbers persist, right? We in New Mexico, whereas other places, I think places like Oklahoma, Louisiana, Texas, all the red states that surround us have ushered in some pretty, what word I want to use, some pretty remarkable criminal legal system reforms to sort of address. And while we can't say that those reforms can get at disparities, I think there is a way we can do that, right? And if you look at, for example, we passed a bill here that would allow folks who are arrested or come in contact with law enforcement with a little bit of I don't know, I don't even want to say a drug, but a little bit of substance that they use to treat themselves, right? If we would take advantage of things like our LEAD programs, or reduce those penalties from being a felony, we can reinvest that money into communities to make them a little bit whole, right? And this plays out often. It has played out often. For example, in 2017, right? I used to get in trouble in you all's neighborhood in the Southwest Command. I used to get in trouble. It was a mess over there. I used to hang around 57th Street and just I was a straight hobo. I hate to admit it. I mean, I was out there making some poor choices. But I remember one time, right? And I'm talking about the criminalization of addiction and things like that. But I remember one time specifically, a car riding around the block about 5 times asking me, "Hey, bro, you know where I can score?" And I'm like, "No, you know where I can score? You know where I can score?" And I'm like, no. The person finally left me alone. And then I'm sorry, someone gave me a comment. I get distracted. Sorry about that. But so I ignored that individual who's driving around the block, right? But a couple blocks later, it was that car with the police car arresting someone, right? And this played out right here, very visible in the international district a few years ago with the federal authorities, right? They did a sting in the international district to presumably, eradicate or get rid of meth and guns on the street. And they end up arresting 103 people, all for really sort of low-level offenses. And out of those people, 27% of those people, keep in mind the population of Albuquerque, Bernalillo County is less than 3%, but keep in mind 28 of the people who were ensnared in that sting were Black, right? And it goes back to the numbers for Hispanic men. I think Hispanic people, let me not do that man and woman thing. Hispanic folks, right? Made up, I think 59% of those arrested, while they represent 44% of the population. So these disparities, like they persist, right? They persist. A report compiled by Drug Policy Alliance, Voices for Children, Young Women United, Bold Futures, formerly Young Women United, have did a study sort of examining or analyzing drug enforcement arrests in Bernalillo County in the same year that drug sting 2017, and they found that that people, Black and people of color, are arrested at much higher rates than their white counterparts for drug possession, even though we know that our white neighbors, I'm saying neighbors, excuse my euphemisms, our white folks sell drugs and use them at just at higher rates than Black folks. But overall, the ACLU of New Mexico right now is in the middle of what we're calling it's the Smart Justice Campaign, and one of the things we want to do with that campaign, because we know, right, one of the things we want to do, right, is sort of work on ending mass incarceration, right? COVID's done a little bit for us there. I think the LFC, the Legislative Finance Committee, just reduced a study of the Department of Corrections, and it shows that our prison population has steadily declined since 2016. And so between 2016 and March 2020, there was something like a 9% decline in the population. But with this past year, including the numbers for COVID, that jumped up to 21%, right? And I think one thing, and where was I going with that? Where was I going with that? One thing is that is telling us that we can do things a little bit differently here in the state. But I want to go back to, what do I want to go back to? How this plays out on the street. We know that what we learned this past year during the pandemic, and with the horrible incidents of that led to the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, is that Black people and people of color are hugely overrepresented in the criminal legal system, right? And that's at every step, right? And so it would be remiss of me not to sort of speak briefly about how this plays out on the street, and like I said, I'll just dig into my own experiences, right? Being a Black male on the West Side, on West Central, and how interactions with how I think interactions with law enforcement sort of lead to folks being in, and I think we're starting to, being involved with the criminal legal system. I think one thing that came out of this last year, and I would like to, commend the department's effort, APD's effort specifically for the work they're doing with the ambassador program to sort of bridge between those communities. Because right now we see the biases and the disparities play out from arrest to adjudication, right? And so what happens, and another example could be, this is a horrible case that the officers brought in Hobbs, New Mexico, when they said they filed a lawsuit, a whistleblower's lawsuit, saying that they were told to go, harass Black people, right? I see a headline, I know what's in the content, don't really need it. So that stuff sort of plays out right now, and I think one thing our department is doing is sort of moving away from that. That ambassador program is a good example. They're working with the Black New Mexico movement to sort of gauge things. But to go back to I think the gentleman, I can't think of his name, who presented on gave the update on hiring and recruiting. I think I wanted to ask a question, and I wanted to ask, like, what are you all doing to really recruit from these neighborhoods, right? Because because when we talk about interactions with the community and law enforcement, I always like to give a good example. And I know I'm digressing, so I apologize. But with the sheriff out in Rio Rico County, right? He's been in the paper a lot. Sheriff James Lujan. But I was a reporter once, and I drove to a scene, and there was a man on that on the island out near the casino, right? And he had a gun, and he was really agitated, right? I mean, this dude he was angry at the world. He was mad, and I watched Sheriff Lujan talk that man out the island, right? No one got injured, and no one was harmed. The only reason that was able to happen is, right, because Sheriff Lujan grew up in that neighborhood, and he knew people that knew that man, right? And so it just creates a sense of community. But excuse the digression. Excuse the digression. So one of the things we wanted to do at the ACLU and our partners with the New Mexico Safe Coalition is ask that the state of New Mexico implement racial impact statements. Implement racial impact statements to just like they do fiscal impact statements, right? Every piece of legislation that's passed in New Mexico is accompanied with a fiscal impact report, right? And that sort of examines how it's going to impact. It allows folks, and if I'm saying things that you already know, just throw something through the screen. But it allows folks it allows various agencies, the law office of the public defender, attorney general, to all weigh in on how they think this law will impact them, impact their budgets, impact their workload. And our idea is to have a racial impact impact statement bill accompany all pieces of criminal system legislation, right? And this will, because there's always unintended consequences when it comes to legislation. I think I'm not sure if some of the, I'm not sure if some of the war on drugs and the mandatory minimum legislation consider the unintended consequences, the wholesale destruction that we have on communities of color, right? When we drive through certain areas of Albuquerque and we see that it's highly impoverished, and high crime rates, we know that those are manifestations of the war on drugs, right? So these racial impact statements will allow folks to our legislators to make informed decisions about the bills that they want to fly. And then I think what was the other one? What was the other racial impact statement? I gotta stop looking at that text. I get all goofy when I see those words there. And so and there's been several places that have done it. Like we talk about racial disparities here in Albuquerque, excuse me, in New Mexico. Wow, we're doing pretty good when it comes to places like Iowa. I think Iowa, I think their population, their Black population, when I read this report, was something like 2%, but their Black inmate population was like 39 or 40%. So we can't beat ourselves up too much in New Mexico. We're doing pretty good. But we do have to, and another thing we need to look at here in New Mexico is a lot of times when we think of disparities, we think of the black-white binary, right? I think that in our work at the ACLU, we need to make sure we do more to include those Native American, Hispanic disparities. I know a lot of the focus is on what happens with Black men in the criminal legal system, but here in New Mexico, it's sort of system-wide, and there's many communities harmed and damaged by this. So each year, what we do, as part of the ACLU is a part of the New Mexico Safe Coalition, right? And that's a coalition of approximately 33 community serving organizations working to change the conversation around crime and public safety in New Mexico. And one of the things that what we do is we grade each piece of criminal legal bill that's introduced, right? And one of the things we try to get at with it, we can't do it all the time, but we try to get at look at it through a racial lens. How will this exacerbate current disparities? How will this land on certain communities of colors, and hope of sort of just making life better for everyone and improving public safety overall. Because I think and then what else do I have for you all? What else? I'm just rambling on. And anyone have any questions, just jump in, because I can talk. I'll just blah, blah, blah. All right. Let's take a break.
Robbie, are there any questions in the chat?
Yeah, so far there aren't any questions that haven't been answered, so nothing major yet.
And so, okay, cool. And so what we want to do, and I talked about, because there's no sense of just really going over the data, but what we eventually want to do, right, is the New Mexico legislature funded a update of the New Mexico Criminal Code, and the New Mexico Sentencing Commission. I'm saying New Mexico a lot. The Sentencing Commission is leading that effort, and I think what we want to see happen there is that they sort of address some of the sentencing issues that lead to non-serious, non-violent offenders spend an excessive amount of time in jail, so they can free up the resources to tackle the more the robust the crime that the Albuquerque Police Department is constantly grappling with right now. But I think I got it all, and I'm sorry I'm all over the place here.
Not at all. Thank you so much. We do have a couple of questions from Mark Breton in the chat. Robbie?
Yeah, I think so. I think right now there isn't, but but we want to first thing we need to do, market, and please don't throw anything at me, but first thing we want to do is change the way we characterize that, right? Because I think that once we say that word homeless, right, it sort of shut people down and it criminalize them. So and please don't get angry with me, but I would suggest like maybe saying our unsheltered community members. I know that's a lot, but it restores dignity to people who are living with housing insecurity issues. So right now, I know the city of Albuquerque was working on an encampment sweepment policy, but I think they yeah, and I will for sure about the encampment sweepment policy, but I think they since have sort of pulled back that effort, but we're watching it closely. But I think the city of Albuquerque has sort of made commitment to work with the family service department in a way that that folks their possessions won't be just destroyed. They would be given a warning, but right now there isn't much going on with that I'm aware of. We are in coalition with Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless, and I do think that I need to get with them to make sure I'm not missing anything. And then someone asked about the ACLU Smart Justice Campaign. Yeah, I love to talk about that, right? So because I started at the ACLU as the Smart Justice Coordinator, right? I could never imagine that having several felony convictions would be like a boon in a job interview. But I must note that before I went to the ACLU, I had worked as a journalist for several years and even got into a argument one Christmas morning with the Governor Martinez, chief of staff. So I had put my criminal past behind me, my mistake making days. And so, but the Campaign for Smart Justice is a campaign designed to reduce the number of people in our prisons and jails by offering up evidence-based solutions that can help address the underlying causes of crime, such as addiction, mental health treatment, right? And so, this for the past 3 or 4 years, we've worked with our partners at Drug Policy Alliance to get more resources, right? We worked with DPA to bring the LEAD program to Bernalillo County and to Albuquerque. And much to my dismay, I think as of February, there were, I think 90 people referred to the program that have been up and running for 2 years, a program designed to move people away from the criminal legal system and get them the service they need to keep their families whole, right? And also the Smart Justice Campaign was also about offering up or working to pass second chance legislation, right? I can't tell you how many times I went to fill out a job application when I was in the heyday. When you're living on the street and you're addicted, I don't know if anyone on this call has been in that situation, but sometimes you wake up in the morning, you're just ready to get your life together, right? You're ready. I'm gonna get me a job. I'm gonna get treatment. And there's been times, right? I always tell people, all of our treatment services are justice are allocated for justice involved people, right? I mean, I would like get sick of being a heroin addict, and I'll call what was it, Turquoise Lodge or the Department of Health, and I'd be like, hey, can I get some help? And they'd be like, oh, Baron, there's a 7-month waiting list, right? So to the person living with an addiction, that's not going to help you. So we've worked for things like that. We work to with our partners at Bold Futures to pass legislation that alleviated the felony question on applications, just so people can get their foot in the door. An employer has every right to ask a person if they have a conviction after they have been offered, during that second phase or offer of conditional employment, right? Just like with the drug test, right? You don't take a drug test with the application. So we wanted something along those lines. And then and the challenge, the racial disparities, as I mentioned. We know it's no secret that racial disparities and biases play out in every step of the criminal legal system, as I mentioned, from who's arrested to the sentences they get, right? And I think this plays out really big in southeast New Mexico. Those folks, you know, they go to jail for a long time down there, you know, especially if you're Black, and there's no sense of mincing words on that. I shouldn't be so timid when I'm talking about this stuff to save lives. But yeah, the Smart Justice Campaign is something that's ongoing, and we're really going to try to, you know, change some laws here.
Mr. Jones, I have a quick question here. I was cutting in and out. I apologize, guys, because I didn't realize we were going to have cleaning this evening, but that's okay. And so a couple questions that we had lined up beforehand. One of them is, last month we were discussing several diversion programs, like the Veterans Diversion Program, and as an alternative to the typical type of prosecution or for incarceration type model. Do you see any, or in your experience, in your research, have you noticed any specific or particular ethnic populations that have participated in these diversion programs more than?
No, I haven't. No, I haven't. But I'm gonna have to say, you know, and like I said, you know, and it's hard to say things when you don't have empirical data to back you up. But anecdotally, I'll use the instance of the dog training program in the state pen, right in Las Cruces. One story, Senator Antoinette Cedillo Lopez always tells whenever she talks about race in our prison system, is who is in that program in Las Cruces, right? So you walk through the whole program, and this is real talk, folks. I don't want to offend anyone, but this is real talk. You walk through the whole program, the prison, the Paul Oliver unit in Las Cruces, and you see tons of Black and brown bodies, right? But when you go to the dog kennels to work and see who's in that program, the majority of the people are white. So what I'm gonna say is that just like I said with who's arrested, I think that's where the biases play out, right? And they're unintended biases. They're not, you know, meant to harm. And I mean, they're not done intentionally, I don't think. But so I would have to say, if I had to guess, I don't have any data, but I think it plays out just like the other portions of our criminal legal system. Sometimes, you know, white folks are afforded those opportunities higher rates than their Black and brown and Native community members. I got to get a stronger back for this stuff because I'm over here scared to talk. Excuse me.
No, you're doing fantastic. I mean, I had a little bit of backup information, and those statistics you just kind of spit out like you've known them for years.
Yeah. So because I mean that's just how it plays out, and I think I don't know. I mean, we got a lot of work to do, but I do think that that we have a sound legislative body who wants to address these issues. Our largest police department, our largest law enforcement agency in the state is working steadfast. They're entrenching themselves in communities. So I think, you know, we're on the right track to addressing some of these issues. I think longitudinally.
I have a question actually. When you brought up the racial disparity or the reporting of racial disparity, and that was really interesting. So that's what the push is for you right now is pushing for that kind of reporting. Have you thought of or thought about, because one thing that came to my mind many years ago was, you know, when you go into invasive surgery, the doctor has to kind of explain all the things that can happen to you, all the things that can go wrong, not just the immediate consequences, but the collateral consequences as well. Have you thought of maybe talking or finding out if, because I know you stand in front of the judge and you say 3 different times, yes, I understand, but the intimidation of standing in front of a judge and him asking you whether or not you understand it's unreal. And so I just kind of, I thought about that one day and thought, well, why isn't there, you know, some kind of form where you could sign and say, okay, I know all of the consequences from here on out. Yes, I will concede to this plea bargain. And I also know what could happen besides that, because I've met quite a few people who have had or who claim to have had ineffective assistance of counsel. And so, you know, something like that, I think, would not only mitigate that, but it would also help them make a better informed decision, especially for somebody who doesn't speak the language.
Oh, yeah, no. So there have been numerous efforts in recent years, and Senator Joseph Cervantes at one point had introduced a bill, the collateral consequences of conviction, because they do, they do give you a one pager, right? And like you said, you're in trauma, right? You're coming out of your cell, you're doing bad, right? And your brain isn't clear. But they hand you that paper, but they don't go as deep as they could, right? About how it will impact your employment opportunities, how it will impact your ability to apply for a student loan in certain situations, how it affects your ability to find safe housing for you and your loved ones, right? So Senator Cervantes offered introduced a bill a couple years ago, and it stalled out for some reason or another. But I'm going to look because I think it came up last year. I think it resurfaced this time around, but may have been a victim of COVID, right? You know what I mean? A victim of the chaos COVID created for our legislative process. But with that said, David, we definitely, that is something we have our eye on, and because it'll make a big difference, right? It'll make a big difference when a person, because folks aren't clear, right? They aren't clear, and a lot of times you just wanted to get it over with, right? When I first signed my first plea bargain, I had no clue of how it was going to impact my life, right? And I think if I knew what I did today, I probably wouldn't have done it. But anyway, I'm here today, and that stuff is in the past.
And we're glad that you're here with us today as well, Robbie.
Yeah, it looks like we had a question from Joseph. He was, with the information you were giving earlier, he said, or asked, he said he was curious whether whether it was primarily racial or is it also tied with financial status?
Yeah, can I get Joseph to someone to elaborate a little bit more? Maybe there's another part of that. Is there another part of that?
I didn't see anything.
We
can get some more information, but Kelly was also wondering if you had any numbers on actual sentencing, for instance, probation or community service versus jail or prison for different racial and ethnic groups.
No, but I think that's something I can get Kelly. I don't think I have them offhand, but I have seen that data around in certain instances. But yeah, that's something would have to bug the court, the AOC for to see if we can get something like that. But that's something that I'm going to put that on my list because I think having a report for that would just work sort of really well and help us, sort of understand how these various sentences are played out, right? Here in New Mexico. So now that's a good one, and thank you for putting that on my radar.
Yeah, that's one thing you hear a lot. That guy got arrested and he's from the Northeast Heights and he got probation, but I ended up getting 30 days or whatever like that. So you do hear those kind of stories. So I was just curious.
Yeah, I can tell you a funny story like that. Like I used to go to jail, right? And I would always call my partner on the phone and be like, "Hey, let so and so out for that." And she'd be like, "Dude, you're gonna drive yourself crazy looking at what's happening with everyone else in there and trying to figure out what's going on with you." But I have seen that happen, Kelly. And in one case, my last trip, right? There was so much crap in my last trip, it scared me straight, right? You know what I mean? I got an 8-year sentence or a 7.5-year sentence for allegedly. I didn't even try to walk out the store with it but $252 worth of stuff. 8 years, folks. That's 5 years. Taxpayers pay 5 years for that, right? Yeah, that and I have to say, full disclosure, they paid for my $50,000 hepatitis C treatment, right? But they scared me straight, right? Because if I went to prison for $252 for that length of time, what could happen if I don't get my crap together, right? If I don't get my stuff together, what can happen, right? And one of the people I was in jail with, Kelly, was I don't know, he was just on the news not too long ago for starting a riot in Clayton, but Clifton Bloomfield, right? I don't know if you recognize the name. The dude he had kicked in someone's door and he was in jail for a home invasion, right? and they RO'd him, and I was sitting in jail for shoplifting. He went out, killed 3 or 4 people, you know. So I have seen that play out, right? I have seen that play out, but I do think that once again, now that we're starting to have these conversations, instances like that will be far fewer between in the future.
I believe that Joseph, thank you for that. And I believe Joseph unmuted to just clarify his question.
Yeah, I grew up in the South Valley, went to Rio Grande, and I had noticed, you know, all different kinds of people or kids would get in trouble. But if they had better financial status, they could get better treatment in the justice system.
Well, well, yeah, it does play out a little bit. Yeah, it does play out because, if a person, if you can't make bail, people who bail themselves out of jail have a much better chance of having a favorable outcome on their cases, right? And I'm not excusing, criminal behavior. I'm not excusing theft. Not too long ago, someone stole from me, and it left me empty. So I'm not condoning any of that. But one's ability to pay bail and one's ability to get out of jail pre-trial has a big impact on how the criminal legal system lands on them, right? And so, yeah, and of course, I'm not, I work closely with the folks at the public defender's office, but they're over, booked. So if you have ability if you have ability to afford an attorney, yeah, more likely you'll have a better outcome. And not only that, you have a better understanding of the collateral consequences that David was just talking about. So yeah, I think finances play a huge role on who goes to prison, how long, and what their stays are like. And yeah, no, hands down, 100%, Joseph.
So there's one more question that you might have addressed earlier, where our vice chair that couldn't be here today, but he asked, it seems that when and if APD would like to also answer this question, we'd be happy to hear from you as well. It seems that when officers communicate general descriptions of suspects or persons of interest, race is often mentioned as the first descriptor among many other characteristics. For example, Hispanic male, approximately 45 years old, with a white shirt and black jeans. Is this true? And if yes, if race isn't an important factor for arrests or prosecutions, why is race the first descriptor used to identify persons?
I better defer. I can't. I do not. I better leave. I can talk about policy all day, but practice is going to leave that for the law enforcement folks on the call.
And it's okay if it can't be answered because Jonathan he sent us a couple of questions beforehand, and if anybody would like to chime in, that would be great. I see Commander Espinoza, you came back on.
Yeah, I can answer that question, and it's a practical response. It doesn't have anything to do with anything other than the visual. And the thing is a lot of people think that that's the only thing. There's multiple things that are put out with the description: height, weight, body type, clothing description, along with race. We're trying to get out as much information as we can to the officers that are working. That way they have the best description to be able to stop somebody. That way we're not stopping just random people for something that we think is a crime. It's just like with a vehicle. You don't just say it's a gray vehicle, a gray sedan. If you have a gray Mustang, early 90s model, you're trying to be as specific as possible. And it's just for the visual. It doesn't have anything to do with anything other than that. And when you're out there on the street and you get a description of somebody, it's just like when somebody's giving you directions. If they tell you turn right at the 2nd Street near the McDonald's, and there's 5 McDonald's in the block, within that, on your drive to that area, you're not gonna know which way to go, which street to turn on. But if they tell you, the exact address, and the house is this color and it has this color of roof, and there should be a black, Ford F-150 parked in the driveway, then you know exactly where to go. And that's all it really has to do with. It doesn't have anything to do with anything else.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. It looks like you
Yeah.
do.
Sorry, real quick. I just wanted to say also thank you to Commander Espinosa for that. But I did have another question to follow up with that. I was wondering if there's anything we can do in the community for the Southwest Area Command with regard to anything. I mean, is there anything that you need from the community? Not necessarily the obvious and everyday, hey, we need people, hey, stuff like that. Is there anything that you could use from the community? Because I know that just reading the preliminary force report was kind of daunting, but it made me sad to think that it's taking longer and longer and longer and longer to kind of get out. Is there anything that we should be aware of? Like, do we need to tell the community, hey, you need to pull over to the right, and say that a little bit more often? Or was there anything that we could do to kind of help that mitigate that time?
I can't think of anything specific off the top of my head. There is some traffic issues that we would like to have some assistance on. There are times where it does take our officers a little bit longer to get to calls because of issues like that, especially during rush hour and such. Some of it's out of our control. Some of it's out of the citizens' control. There's not much you can do when you're all stacked up at a light and there's a cop that's trying to get through with their lights and sirens on and stuff like that. We're trying to allocate our resources to our areas that we could show statistically that we need resources in. The best thing I could tell you all is to be good eyes and ears, and if you see something, say something. I think that a lot of times what ends up happening is we get complacent in getting used to certain things happening. Like I know that there's a big issue of gunshots going off in the Southwest area, and we are adding more to our shot spotter gunshot detection equipment, but a lot of times people just get used to, well, that's just the way the neighborhood is. And building that, complacency, and just kind of gets to the point where, well, this is just the neighborhood we live in. This is just the type of area that this is, that kind of thing, and becomes the norm. And then we go to meetings, or we go to associations, or we have CPC, and people start telling us about, these issues of concern that they have. They had this happen, they had that happen. And then we go to research our CAD system or something like that, and we don't see any record of this happening. So that's why I tell people, if you see something, say something. Don't get used to just dealing with, if there's speeding issues, if there's drunk driving issues, if there's gunshots going off in your neighborhood, just think that that's just a normal thing, and we're not going to respond. We might take a little longer than what people like, and it might frustrate, but at least it gives us that information for us to be able to get out there. And I think that's probably the best advice I could give off the top of my head for that. So thanks for the question, though.
Yeah, thank you.
We do have a follow-up question from Nicole from the prior question. And I do just want to say before we move forward that you made a really good point, like with the shot spotter, more and more people are getting used to it, that they're not calling in. And that makes sense that it doesn't help APD to recognize what's really happening, because they just kind of get used to it. So that's something to really think about, how it affects APD, and how, if you don't know what's happening, then you can't really support and do the things that you need to do. But moving on to Nicole Rogers' question from the prior question from Jonathan. The follow-up question would be, why don't we track race or ethnicity data on traffic stops that are tracked in most other cities, specifically to pinpoint racial profiling, yet we don't track it?
Oh, wait. So the ACLU is also part of the APD4 coalition, right? And we sort of work as we like to think we represent a fair swath of the community's voice in the reform effort. And that's been something that we've been back and forth with APD for a better part of 5 years since that consent decree has been up and running. Is the tracking of racial and ethnicity data throughout the entire criminal legal system. I think it's really sort of important. We've seen that Colorado passed a bill during in June 2020 that requires it. But one thing, when it comes to data, for some reason, no one likes to collect it. I think, no one likes to collect it. As a reporter, I used to routinely look at police reports, right? And I often, not 9 times out of 10, you can go look at 15 police reports and they're not gonna have those data box checked of the race of the folks, right? And I'm not sure if it's something that's getting better, but I know from my professional experience and my work today, my work as a reporter, I also worked as a crime reporter for the Journal. I started there, but I wasn't that any good. Anyways, so that's something that we've been working on because it's really super important. And we're working with the APD. We're going to be talking with the APDs. What they have a new data group that's been doing a pretty good job, but that's something that we've been fighting for a few years now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Are there any other questions from our Southwest CPC Council members that you all have lingering before we move on, or in the community? We do have one more, sorry. Go ahead, Robbie, I saw you unmute.
Yeah, this one also comes from Nicole. It says that I think our officers need some help prioritizing self-care on and off duty. Community can help by partnering to provide self-care items that can help officers to decompress. I think that's actually a good idea if we offer officers maybe stuff that maybe your business can provide. Maybe you own a restaurant or a yoga studio or something. It would be pretty nice to just, maybe give something over to an officer just so they have something that they can, do that on their off time.
I just want to say, like, any support that you guys can give to the officers is greatly appreciated. Anything as simple as a thank you, a wave, all the way to if they're willing to do any of the things that you had just mentioned, Mr. Vigil, would be greatly appreciated by the officers. The day and times and officers nowadays, it can get overwhelming, and officer well-being and self-care is a top priority of the department. We have a lot of resources within the city, within our department to help with that, but any additional would also make a huge impact, and it would really mean a lot to the officers. So thank you.
And I have one last question, or at least I just want to ask Mr. Jones. Do you have any contact information you want to share with the public or with anybody here at the CPC, just in case maybe we want to get a hold of you and see if there's anything we want to kind of reach out to you about?
Yeah, and I'm putting my phone number in there also. I'm not very good at I thought I was gonna what's it called. And I was gonna say to Nicole's point, I think that I think we can, sort of, the ACS department is a really good start for, sort of taking some of the things away or just sort of just switching things up a little bit. So we won't demand, demand so much from our law enforcement community. I think law enforcement is similar to teachers, right? Every time a problem come up, in the community, we can put a dentist office in the school. We can, and so schools are saddled with all these responsibilities, and I think that's true of law enforcement also. I think what our city is telling us that crime is up in the city, but in one category, right? It's in homicide. So we need to, have our law enforcement officers focus on, that stuff instead of this stuff, these quality of life crimes sometimes. And I know, they're not beautiful to see. They're seeing people living on the street is not something that's pleasant, right? But I think, yeah, that other folks should deal with that. It's just in my humble opinion.
All right. Thank you so much for that. And are there any other questions from anybody? We want to make sure and respect everybody's time. We're pretty good on, we're at 7:05 right now.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion?
We don't have any questions just yet, but before we do that, thank you so much, Mr. Jones, for being here with us. Just wanted to extend gratitude to you for coming on to our Southwest CPC meeting and having a really transparent conversation. And you're a joy. Honestly, I would love to meet you in person. As I know other people on this screen would as well. I can't wait for that when we can actually get back to that. But before we do, and I also wanted to say thank you to Commander Espinoza and for Nicole for stating what she did in the chat, because it is really important. We at the Southwest CPC are really working towards, honoring our APD officers, and we are hoping to have something in future, hoping for December, to where if you have had a positive experience with an APD officer within the Southwest Area Command, please let us know. We're also trying to work to create a coffee with the cop and really spend time with them. And as you mentioned earlier, just having those police officers and getting to know them within our community, it's a huge difference, right? So with that being said, we do have somebody that I did not see earlier, and I wanted to deeply apologize. I wanted to give some time for him to introduce himself. So we do have Josh Brown, who is the new interim chief of the field. And so if you'd like to take a moment to introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm sorry about that. I was actually getting a phone call from another area command. Hi, my name is Josh Brown. I just wanted to kind of take a minute to introduce myself. I'm the new interim deputy chief for the field services. I'd like to start off by first saying that you guys have a great commander in Tim Espinosa. His numbers down in all categories across the board this year, property crimes, violent crimes, and everything. So he's doing a great job for you guys in the Southwest. Just kind of hit on some of the things. I've been an officer now for 21 years. I've had the ability to do pretty much every aspect of the department. I was in the field. I was a canine officer. I was in SWAT for a number of years. I was a sergeant of auto theft. I was lieutenant of property crimes and violent crimes, and so kind of across the spectrum. My last assignment was in the Valley Area Command as the area commander. And just to kind of touch on a few things that Mr. Jones kind of touched on earlier, and I appreciate his input, is is that some of the things they're working on right now, we talk about people being fortunately arrested and lack of diversion programs. One of the things that we're working on right now is that Judge Dominguez in both Metro Court and in the Mayor's new initiative is looking at ways to get officers to be able to self-refer into a system in lieu of making arrests. So like we have law enforcement assisted diversions, but in doing some of those, they have to go see a judge first. The ones that we're trying to get pushed through now is at an officer's discretion, is being able to take that person and get them directly connected to services, whether it be mental health, substance abuse, things like that, to where the officer can directly refer them into a system and get them in that side of it before they ever get introduced into the judicial system. Kind of keep them out of that loop, and that way it doesn't just create that vicious cycle. So I'm actually meeting next week with part of that council to kind of go over some of our thoughts and ideas on how we can best introduce that to, into the judicial system. But for all of it to work, you got to think of it as one big clock. In that clock, you have multiple gears and wheels, and APD is one part of that wheel. We have the judicial systems, that's the other part of the wheel. Substance abuse, mental health is another portion of it. And for the whole system to work, all the gears have to be working in conjunction with each other. That's kind of what we're trying to do now is create that communication and understanding between each of those groups, so we can best serve the people that we're designed and put on here to serve. We talked about people experiencing homelessness tonight, the unhoused, and the city's just hired six new hires for the public outreach program who assist people who are experiencing homelessness getting connected to services. The department just hired 4 new navigators to kind of get people in contact. If somebody gets arrested, I mean, the biggest thing to remember is homelessness is not a crime. If somebody's been unhoused and through the pandemic, I think we're going to see a lot more of it come up with the moratorium expiring on the eviction stuff, and it's kind of, I think it's kind of going to be a mess here for a while as more people are going to become unhoused from that. So we're trying to do the best we can on the police department side to get those people the resources they need. But in doing so, we kind of look at it as my officers aren't social workers, and that's one of the things that we need people to understand and remember is when we're responding to something, it's usually in somebody's most intimate time of crisis. So if we have something to where it doesn't take an officer to respond to, somebody's having a panic attack, is that the best place to use an officer and put them in the back of a car? Probably not. Then that's one of the things that we're working on as well with the Albuquerque Community Safety Department is to identify those calls that don't take a police officer to show up. It could be handled by someone who's not in uniform to get a bit better results. And Mr. Jones, you brought up the homeless encampment policy that you had spoke about. And just to kind of give you an update, that hasn't been pushed on the back burner. That's actually going through the process now. Any new policy that we get through the police department has to go through a couple different boards. It goes through during our consent decree. We send that to both the monitoring team and the DOJ for approval for any revisions, updates, anything they'd like to see in there as well. I just got that policy back this week from DOJ, and we're looking at the recommendations that DOJ put in there, and then we'll formulate a response. It goes back and forth a little bit before it gets actually published. So, but one of the things we're looking at doing with that is actually limiting our officers' exposure to encampments. I mean, if it's on public property and they're not breaking the law, one of the things that we're looking at on that is we're there for scene security only. If someone is going to go out to do those notifications, that's going to fall on family and community and Albuquerque Community Safety Department, and ensuring those people have resources available, and limiting the police contact, because a lot of times through historical traumas in the past, they don't want the police officer standing out there. It's going to aggravate a situation which we don't want our officers to get involved with, especially when there hasn't been a crime being committed. The officers' involvements won't detail anything to where they're going to go up there if they're there for scene security. They're not going to be running people for warrants, and our officers are not going to be throwing anything away. They're not going to be involved in any of the camp cleanups. We don't want them to have to, we're not there to deprive anyone of their property. That's not our job. Our job is there to make sure everyone's safe and keep the peace. Touched on the ambassador program. I mean, that's a great program, but there's 10 different categories right now, and part of what I think Mr. Reyes had asked is what the community can do to kind of assist the police department in things moving forward. I think this council is a perfect thing, right? You have this is where we take the input and any recommendations that you guys have, because for too long in the past, what did we have for police responses? We always pushed out initiatives onto the public. Okay, this is what we're doing in your neighborhood. This is what we're doing for you. We never asked anybody what they wanted. And so, one of the things that we're asking now is, how better can we serve you? What problems are you actually having that we can assist you with? And so, that this council is a great forum for that. So we can actually go through and hear directly any input. I mean, there's 2 different ways to do it, right? There's a referral. So if you have a referral issue for crime in your neighborhood, or if you have that recommendation, which is an actual policy recommendation, then we can take them on both sides. But, you know, one of the things that we ask is, you know, instead of us pushing another police, you know, program on you, or, you know, anti-crime initiative that, you know, we're pushing into this neighborhood, you know, what things, you know, bother you guys the most? Like what crime is affecting you the most? What can we do better as a police department? So that's just kind of some of the things that we've been working on. And so that's all I got for right now.
Thank you so much for the information. And we don't have reactions, but I wanted to do the applause. Thank you for that information and for what you said, and really striving to work with the community and taking our recommendations and working together like the ambassador program, which we look forward to connecting with, and just really building the bridges for our community to support you and vice versa. So thank you for that and the information. The last thing that I did want to do, as our commander Timothy Espinoza is with us, I wanted to give him some time to give us some brief updates before we do adjourn, do a motion to adjourn, if that's okay with everybody.
Am I good to go?
Yes.
All right. Thank you all for putting this together. As like I said earlier, I really meant the Southwest CPC has come a long way, and it's because of the efforts that you all have put into this, putting in your own time to invest in the community and try to make things better. So I just want to thank you, sincerely say thank you all for doing this. It really does mean a lot. From the time I got into the Southwest as the acting commander a little over 3 years ago to where it's at now is just kind of overwhelming of how well things have gone. So that being said, as far as updates for the Southwest Area Command, to kind of piggyback off of what Deputy Chief Brown had mentioned, as far as statistical numbers, year to date, we are moving in the right direction as an area command. Our property crimes are significantly down across the board, double digits in commercial burglaries, residential, shoplifting in the negative. Currently, we're just below double digits in auto theft as far as negative. We're at like negative 9% year to date compared to the last couple years. So as an area command, we're moving in the right direction. The one thing that was mentioned was the spike in homicides. We do have more year to date than we did last year in the Southwest. There isn't anything specific as far as just like the randomness, because I know that that's a very scary topic when it's mentioned. It's not just random individuals that are being targeted. We do have some domestic issues and drug-related issues that have been the primary nexus for our homicides in the Southwest. We have done a lot of focus on certain areas that are hot spots. Our two primary spots right now are the Coors and Iliff, where the hotel motel business area is. We do have a lot of significant activity. I do stay in contact with the business managers, the clerks, the neighborhood associations in that entire area. And I do get a lot of feedback as far as narcotics activity. There's a lot of break-ins in that area. Hotel motels usually have kind of that, as far as break-ins for vehicles and auto theft do occur. That's not uncommon for those areas, but has been brought to my attention. The other one that we focus on is our Coors and Central Corridor that we have. We kind of call it our backyard for our PRT team. That's where they spend a lot of their time focusing on. We've had some significant movement in the right direction in that area, which has allowed us to free those resources up to move up to Coors and Iliff, because as you all have seen, the hotels, we've had some homicides. We have had, I believe, 2 in that area year to date. I think might be 3. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but there is an initiative citywide to focus on that area. So that is something that we're going to give some extra attention to over the next several months. With things opening up, significantly, we have a lot more people on the street. Unfortunately, we did have another speeding involved fatal accident over off of 98th Street and Dennis Chavez area involving a motorcycle and an SUV. Our efforts with the city council, the Speeding Has a Name campaign, we're still pushing that. We do have signs at the substation if anybody is interested in putting up signs. That's one of our other biggest complaints that we have is speeding, the drag racing that we have over off West Central and off of 98th Street. Unser, we have a lot of long stretches of road that people end up tending to drag race and speed on. We are trying to distribute our speed trailers throughout those areas. It's, you know, I only have a handful of them, so they can't be all over the place. So if you do have a request or anything like that in any of your neighborhood, please make sure that we know. We'll try to get a speed trailer out there. We're putting a lot of resources in technology-wise. We're expanding our gunshot detection equipment here to add, I think, another 2 square miles of the Southwest Area Command to the it's called ShotSpotter, which will give us just some more tools to combat some of the issues that we're facing in our area command. On a positive note, we are on our youth leadership program, and our lowrider is in full swing. We are looking to get involved with the high schools in the area, particularly West Mesa High School. We have had more than I can count requests to have our vehicle and the people participating in it to be at special events. I just want to reiterate that the vehicle is the end product of a program and initiative that we're focusing on having to do with community engagement and community policing. We collaborated with so many different people from the community, from people that had been kind of in the same situation as the gentleman that presented tonight, all the way to mechanics, youth, everybody to get involved into this program. And that's what it really means a lot to me. I really put a lot of effort into it, and it means a lot to me, the whole program. And we're on the cusp of collaborating with several departments throughout the country, Olathe County in Kansas, Tucson, Arizona, San Diego Police Department, to try and formulate a national youth leadership program initiative. So I think that's a real positive thing. Keep your ear to the ground. We're going to be having some more things moving forward to get people involved and getting the youth involved. We just got a brand new trailer for our lowrider. So we're looking at trying to have another art contest, trying to decorate the trailer. So if you guys have any high school artists out there, we're definitely going to start the advertising for that. We're on the cusp of the new bid change come the end of the month, August 28th. So you're going to see some new faces in the area command. We didn't have a crazy turnover. I'd say about half-ish of our officers are returning that are currently here. And we had several supervisors and lieutenants return as well. So there's gonna be a lot of familiar faces, but we are gonna have some new faces. I'll make sure that we have some, and hopefully we could be in person soon. That way you can all meet them face to face here come at the end of the month. Thank you all for your time. I appreciate you giving me a chance to speak. And if there's any concerns or questions that you want to hit me up offline, feel free to get a hold of me via email. I'll put it in the chat and or at the Southwest substation, and I'll make sure and try and get back with you and try to focus on those issues and get our officers out there as best as we can. So thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and we hope to work with you alongside with the lowrider and hopefully getting some community engagement with that. So please let us know how we at the Southwest can support you in future. That's super exciting. I saw the reveal and it just looked amazing.
Are you letting the public hit the switches?
That's a big negative. Yeah, it's Sergeant Middleton is the lead for that program. He's on leave right now because he just had a baby, but he hardly lets me even touch the thing, much less anybody else. But no, it's something that if you guys can get out a chance to take a look at it and talk to the people that put in on the build, it's really inspiring story, and the vehicle is beautiful if you get to see it in person. So.
It is. You all did a great job. Right, everybody, it is 7:24, and so if there are not any more questions in the chat, I also placed in our social media. Please follow us and please spread our meetings within your community. We are really here to help address some of these issues that are happening and connect with APD in building that bridge and that communication with other programs, the ambassador programs. Just a quick shout out to Nicole Rogers and being part of that, and a friend of mine, and everybody's doing amazing work, and I think that we're headed in the right direction. So I appreciate everybody's efforts. So with that being said, it is 7:25. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
A second.
I second.
All right, perfect. 7:25. I hope you all have a great evening. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Johnson, Commander Espinosa, and everybody else, Mr. Brown.
Thanks, everybody.
Have a good evening.
Night.
See you next month.